Starting off with a little house cleaning, there are 3 new channels, virtual reality, animal rights kind of stuff, and Doom. Yeah, another subject over there. Sorry, I don't know exactly which direction those channels will take, but try to do a video a week at least. And so who knows the future of this channel. Whatever, who knows, have no idea. So if you're interested in those subjects, then you subscribe to those channels, and then you don't have to listen to the other stuff, and then you don't have to go all pissed off and angry, and then we don't have to have all these fights. But anyway, so moving on, there was a subject I wanted to get to, which was this whole philosophy thing. Like, how do we even acquire one of these things called a philosophy? And the modern mystical kind of has gone there with a video basically talking about it, that we should know our limitations, and that somehow all philosophies are alike, are equal somehow. And that I have exactly the opposite opinion, that there's a huge difference in the thing called credibility. I mean, there's a way you earn that. It isn't, you can't just say you have it. You just don't say, yes, my philosophy has integrity. No, you kind of have to demonstrate its integrity. So if you're born into it, that's going to be a strike against it. If that's all you have to bring to the table, I believe this because my parents believed it. That's not a very persuasive bit of logic. And so I guess there's no real good analogies for this thing, but if you were to say, if you were an alien and you were visiting some other planetoid and there were people living there, and 7 billion of them, and you kind of wanted to know their story, and then all 7 billion of them were giving you a different story, you'd have to do something. You'd have to have some equation to say, well, which ones are full of shit and which ones aren't. I mean, you'd have to have some way to determine that. At least you would attempt to. It wouldn't be reasonable not to. And in evaluating the 7 billion philosophy holders on Earth, yeah, there are things you can wipe out and say that's not a credible source. Philosophies can gain integrity. You can test them and you can work on them, and the more time somebody spends working on it, you have to respect that time put in, especially if it's put in the context of accepting some basic facts of life. And so that's sort of what I want to get back to. Is I'd started a video a while back, the 100 facts of life or whatever, top 100, and I figured out there's less than 10 actually. There really aren't that many key facts to accept, to acknowledge, to that are the real core of what reality, of describing reality, and that's what we're talking about. And I think you can weight those facts. I mean, there's some facts that just can't be rationally denied. It's only through irrational missions that they can be denied. I mean, you have to have some cause, some motivation, some impetus to refuse to accept them, and that can become quite obvious in many traditional notions of the truth. Is that all that people are attached to is the tradition. All they're attached to is their own addiction to a truth, not its logic, not its integrity as a thought. They've just accepted it and become quite addicted to it, and they have an affection for it, and that's their definition of philosophy, and that's just psychology. And so I guess it's through understanding psychology is the mechanism through which we can weight different philosophies, because some philosophies are derived through very broken psychologies. It's not even that it's broken, it's just there's an obvious corruption of psychology in the philosophy, and there's nothing wrong with saying that those are two different things. Then a philosophy that's built out of a sincere effort to describe the truth, and a philosophy built out of an effort to validate their own psychology, there's an obvious credibility difference, and it's not stepping over some arrogant line to sit there and acknowledge that fundamental truth, that there's a point where you can earn a degree of arrogance, where you can earn a degree of judgment, being judgmental. There's a point where you have a right to do that, when your authority has been justified by work and the acquisition of competence. I don't, it's a hard concept to describe, but there's a difference. They're just not inherently equal, because they're built out of inherently different things. So it's sort of important. It's a big part of philosophy is creating a ground where people can even communicate. And people accuse me of not listening and not being susceptible to some sort of knowledge they wish to convey to me. And I think I'm vulnerable to a better truth. I just don't think anybody's preaching any better truth. So until they do, I'm not going to change what I understand, because I've built it over a long period of time, and I've tested the hell out of it. It's reliable. The design, like say if it was an engine or something else, and you've driven hundreds of thousands of miles, if somebody's going to tell you there's a flaw in the design, well, they're going to have to bring to the table substantial evidence, because your own evidence, your own testing, doesn't demonstrate that, and it gives you plenty of reason to have confidence. So anyway, it's a strange mix of psychology and, well, it's not strange, it happens all the time, of psychology and philosophy, because really that's got to be like one of the kind of important facts, that psychology is not philosophy. What you feel isn't a justification for a belief system. You've got to verify, you've got to test the feeling's context and meaning with intelligence, by contextualizing the truth, the statement, the bit of knowledge, and putting it in the context of a whole theory of truth. And it's got to be compatible with the other truths that exist. And that's where most philosophies, they can't stand. They have no integrity. You look, most religious beliefs are based on this notion of faith. Confidence without reason, an insane premise on its face. But then the people who do believe will go past their own faith, and they will try to make some sort of rational argument, and they'll hold up a pocket watch and say it couldn't just poof all by itself. But then they won't be able to explain how their God poofed all by itself. So that's the contextual truth that they have to validate their philosophy in, is that context says, well, your pocket watch example doesn't mean anything, because the premise of your philosophy is that a pocket watch always existed, or that was magically poofed. So how, you haven't changed the equation any. By saying a God had to give birth to us without explaining how the God got birthed is illogical. It's fundamentally and catastrophically flawed as an argument. And there's a lot of people whose philosophies are based on that kind of broken logic. And when you find it, when you detect it, when you reveal it, you have a right to say that yes, our philosophies aren't the same. They aren't equal, because one is built on something that either can't be tested or has failed to test, and one has done the opposite.
This is part of the real whatever, the beef of life, is trying to we have to get to some sort of common ground. Human beings, if they're going to accomplish anything, if they're going to even survive, they have to find some way to get past this it seems ludicrous obstacle of there being 8 billion different definitions of reality. It's not going to work that way. I mean, we have to have some way to funnel this down or narrow this down. And if we don't, that chaos is just, that's toxic. It's just toxic. And there's got to be some way to work through it. And whether the way is that we ultimately have some kind of Russian roulette system and just say, okay, well, we've narrowed it down to these 10 contenders, and one of them's going to win and get to rule the day. I don't know. I don't know what the most practical way to do that is. But I think presenting the foundational facts and being passionate or something about those, and forcing people to account for them, forcing them to justify the contradiction that exists between their philosophy and one of those fundamental facts. That might be a way to get through to people. But it's a real... I mean, it's life is really fucked up as it is, and it just makes it so much harder for us to do anything to make it unfucked. The fact that we can't agree on anything just makes it so much more impossible.